I
I don't
had
know
it twice.
how.
You know,
I
I'm
also
still
don't know
sick.
how 4 years have already gone by.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's I think just as scary.
Like
time
it
has
feels
kept up
like
with that
it
construct.
kind of feels like those years just didn't happen. Like from
Hmm.
once
Yeah.
everything shut down to once everything kind of reopened again, like those time just it's gone.
By the way,
It,
sorry to interrupt, Tommy. I love the fact we can literally just see from his glasses down. We can't see the top of his head.
oh, I can see it.
Really?
I can see his
Oh,
whole thing
really?
on my thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
I
see
get.
him.
Okay,
Oh,
there
should
you
I
go.
do this? Should I do like
What?
that? Is that better?
There you go. That's so much
Yeah,
better. Yeah,
that's
because
Yeah,
like
okay.
all
like
I
I'm in
could see
frame.
is
I
just your
could see
face like
all of
super
me.
zoomed in.
So
You
was
can
I just like this for you, like
Pretty
that?
pretty much.
apparently.
Just focus on like your eyebrows down, but your
He just
glasses
really
are
likes your
covering your
collar,
eyebrows.
Tommy. That's what Jeff is
Yeah,
saying.
I
that's what it
do.
was.
You
That's
have a
what it
What was
really good
was.
that?
color.
What's Jeff really saying?
He really likes your collar. He just wanted to see you zoomed in and
Yeah,
such.
yeah, no big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, no, wait, but it's a good point. I mean, I think that the concept of COVID was so strange because obviously we're all locked in our own humble abodes for a period of time. But I think by the time things started to get even slightly different, we were just ready to burst out and actually start living again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the blend of being allowed to go out and about again and really being allowed to go out and about again, it did mesh quickly.
it did.
It's
And
really
then
strange
I feel
times.
like
I
the one
don't
thing
miss
that did
that.
help was actually kind of having this podcast is because there was at least once a week that Jeff and I and Brian could get on, just
Yep.
talk or whatever. I think a couple of times that first year, Matt was on a couple of times. So
Mhm.
Yep.
that was just
Keep
kind
yourselves
of,
from going truly insane.
yeah, completely insane.
Yeah, and Zoom. That's when Zoom's stock started to absolutely skyrocket because people just had to talk to each other on a computer.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then
Fun
we
times.
introduced Tommy to the podcast late last year.
yeah. Was that my debut?
Yeah, you've been on a
It was
couple. I
long
think like,
overdue.
yeah, it was long overdue, but we're
Yeah, it
glad you
was.
got on because there was a definitely good highlights here and there with you on there.
Yeah.
You guys
Nice.
have any great memories from your 4 years podcasting? I mean, I've only been on a few apps, so I'm assuming there's been some fun
That's a
moments.
good
Yeah, there
question,
was the great
actually.
time when you were last on when we talked about Jeff's favorite Marvel movie, God or Thor: Love and Thunder.
I remember that. That was
Yeah, it was Jeff's
horrible.
favorite movie. I remember.
Oh God, Jeffrey, your favorite movie? You loved it.
Yeah, he loved it.
Thanks, guys.
Hmm.
Wait, you're
Excuse me.
kidding,
I'm
right?
going to
This
throw
is
up.
like all jokes.
I never joke about something as
Yes.
serious as Marvel
No,
movies.
Wimmer would never joke about this,
Where's the
Tommy. He's
sarcasm
taking
button?
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not picking up a ton of sarcasm unless
It's. I will say.
it's like the
Yeah.
vibes of doing this
Yeah.
virtually
I
are
will
not
say
serving
though,
me well.
if for those who have not known Whitmer as long as I have, I can, for the most part, there are times where it's hard to pick up sarcasm over text, but in person like this, it's usually pretty easy for me to pick up his sarcasm for as long as I've known. I've actually known
Yes.
him almost as long as Tommy, so I've known him before Matt and Brian.
I
Really?
think I
No
met
kidding.
Matt or
Yeah,
Tommy around the same time, was somewhere around middle school age.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
to
you were
answer
just
your
before
original, yeah,
we got into middle school, Jeff. So you weren't
yep,
terribly far off. You're like maybe a month or
no,
so or a couple months.
yeah.
Mm.
But Matt, to answer your original question, I would say one of the top moments. I would say it's really not even that great, which is the funny part. So it was
This
one
is
of
a
the
great
first few
start to your
episodes.
story, Jeffrey. It's
Yes,
not
it is.
great. Let me explain why. Go
But no,
ahead.
so literally, it was one of those moments where I think it was Brian. He started laughing for
No, you
some
did,
stupid
Jeffrey.
reason. Or
You
no, I'm
did.
sorry, it was
Yes, you
me.
did. So in
And
context, sorry,
Brian,
just go back in context.
you know, just I'll
We
let
were
Whitmer
talking
explain.
about for some reason it was actually one of like the better conversations we had. We were actually talking about like the college, if like college itself was
Yes,
worth it. And it was like one of our like more like kind of split, kind of we all had
legitimate,
different.
serious topics,
But then
and
for
then it
5 minutes
all went to
straight,
hell.
Jeff and Brian are laughing for no reason whatsoever.
I started laughing first, then Brian started laughing. Then it turned out that I tried to cover my screen with a piece of paper for what I remember. That way I can see Brian laughing. And I started laughing so hard that Brian stopped laughing. When they started picking back up, you just see me start losing again.
Oh
And
my
Brian then
God.
just started
I
breaking.
think
And
we've
then
all
we
witnessed that
lost it.
outside the podcast when those two just lose it for no reason whatsoever, and then they can't look at each other because they'll keep laughing.
Yeah. And literally,
And
that's why I had to block Brian's picture on my screen because I kept losing every time I looked at him. Even I moved it the tiniest bit. I just saw him just like double it over like that and everything, and we just absolutely lost it. So
Well,
yeah,
the best way to get them to stop laughing is just to force them to fight each other. That's usually been my go-to
That is a
approach.
good go-to.
That does
kind of-
work for Brian and Jeff specifically, but there's not really an antidote for when me and Brian do it. We had our fair share of moments of that.
yes, it's kind of one of those things where it's just like just let it all out. Just and at that point, I think that's the only few times I've seen Whitmer pretty upset and mad because he was like at first is like start laughing and this and that, and then he's like, "All right, guys, this is
Like,
getting freaking
it's
old.
getting
I just
5
want
minutes strong. I was
podcast."
trying to be poignant at the time, and then it's like, okay, guys, let's calm
And
down.
for-
a bit.
I felt like I
But
had like a
on the
rude
flip
instant
side of
spit
that,
back from
my favorite moment, similar to that, there was a good half hour or so in a random podcast where Brian's trying to figure out what he wants to get from DoorDash, and it took about 20 minutes in for him to annoy Jeff for as long as it took for Brian to figure out what
and
he
at one
wanted.
point he literally started ordering DoorDash on his face. All right, guys, we're done podcasting. So he like the last 5 minutes is just him on his phone like this, literally
I wanna-
picking. He's
yeah.
like, what do I want from DoorDash? I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, both these moments we do have on our
Yeah.
Underachievers podcast YouTube page if you want to check them out as well.
Yeah, it helps
Um,
that visual of these stories. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. But in terms of like conversations we've had, that was a good one. Talking college. It was a longer video. I think we've talked maybe like 40 minutes about it, but
Yep.
that was a good conversation.
The one where
Last
Brian
year-
can't correctly, do his mathematics is always one of
Oh
my
yeah, that
personal
was
favorites.
a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So we've had
Well,
several good
Yeah,
ones.
2020 minus 2004 is not 21.
Yeah,
It's not. He did. He thought it was 21.
poor Brian.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you don't show up the podcast. You're just subject to getting bullied.
It's
Oh
true.
yeah, whether you're here or not.
He brought this on himself.
That's true. But one of the better ones actually came from last year because it split off into two conversations. So we had one of our segments we usually have is like a question of the hour kind of thing. It was kind of a would you rather go up into space or go into the depths of the ocean? And somehow that conversation got to me waking up Godzilla and him going on a killing spree, and I did it. I caused it.
Hmm.
And Brian
Somehow.
came, and it was Brian. He's not on here, so he's taking credit for this. Said that Godzilla was evil. He was bad.
Yes, and
Depends
so
on the
we went
universe.
on a
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.